You are standing in a crowd. Someone collapses 10 feet away. You look around. Everyone else is looking around too. Nobody moves. And somewhere deep in your chest, a strange calculation is happening. One you didn't choose and can't feel yourself making. You assume someone else will step in. But here's the strange part. The more people who witness the exact same emergency, the less likely any single one of them is to help. That sounds backwards. Shouldn't more witnesses mean more help? The real answer is far stranger, and it has almost nothing to do with how much you care. In March of 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in Queens, New York. The initial newspaper account claimed dozens of neighbors heard her cries and did nothing. That specific number has since been disputed and partly debunked by later reporting. But the story did something unexpected. It didn't just horrify the public. It reached two psychologists named Bibb Latané and John Darley, and it made them ask a question nobody had really asked before. What if the presence of other people doesn't make someone safer? What if it makes them less safe? Latané and Darley built an experiment to test it. They put a single participant in a room, alone, with an intercom. The participant believed they were talking to other students about personal problems at college. In reality, the other voices were recordings. Partway through the conversation, one voice began to choke and gasp, clearly having some kind of seizure, then went silent. When the participant believed they were the only one who could hear this, 90% of them left the room within seconds to get help. But when participants believed 4 other people could also hear the emergency, that number collapsed. Fewer than a third responded in time. Same emergency, same fake choking voice, same room, more or less. The only thing that changed was how many other people the participant believed were also listening. Your brain doesn't do this because it's broken. It does this because it evolved for small groups, not crowds. For most of human history, you knew everyone around you. If someone fell, you knew exactly who was closest, who was strongest, who was already moving. Responsibility was obvious because the group was small enough to read at a glance. Strip that away, drop a person into a crowd of strangers, and the brain has no clean way to assign the job of helping. So it quietly spreads the responsibility across everyone present. Which means, mathematically, each person ends up feeling almost none of it. Psychologists call this diffusion of responsibility, and it's only half the story. The other half is something even sneakier, something that happens before you've even decided whether to act. It's called pluralistic ignorance, and it works like this. In an ambiguous situation, a stumble, a loud noise, a person slumped on a bench, you glance at the people around you before you decide how to react. Everyone else is doing the exact same thing. Everyone is scanning everyone else's face for the correct response. And because nobody wants to be the one who overreacts to a false alarm, everyone reads everyone else's calm, uncertain expression as evidence that nothing is actually wrong. A room full of people can each privately think something is off, while collectively performing total calm for one another. Nobody is lying. Nobody is even aware they're doing it. Do you see how that trap closes? In 1973, 2 other psychologists, John Darley again, this time with Daniel Batson, ran a study that made the effect even more uncomfortable to sit with. They recruited seminary students, people training to become ministers, and gave some of them the task of preparing a talk on the parable of the Good Samaritan, a story specifically about stopping to help a stranger in need. Then they sent each student, one at a time, to another building to deliver it. Along the route, an actor slumped in a doorway, coughing and groaning, clearly in distress. The single biggest predictor of whether a seminary student stopped to help wasn't how religious they were. It wasn't even whether they'd just been thinking about the Good Samaritan story minutes earlier. It was whether they'd been told they were running late. Rushed students stepped over a suffering man on their way to give a speech about stopping for a suffering man. The content of your values matters far less in that moment than the pressure of the clock. So the bystander effect isn't really about apathy. It's about architecture. It's about how many strangers are in the room, how ambiguous the situation looks, and how much time pressure is sitting on your shoulders when it happens. Change any one of those 3 variables, and the numbers shift dramatically. This is why safety trainers now teach something deceptively simple. If you are ever the one who needs help in a crowd, don't shout for someone. Point at a specific person. Say what you need directly to them. You in the blue jacket, call an ambulance. The moment responsibility has a name and a face attached to it, diffusion collapses. The crowd stops being a fog of maybes and becomes one person with a clear job. Here's the part that should make you slightly uneasy. This isn't a flaw that only shows up in emergencies on sidewalks. It shows up every time you're in a group chat where something needs addressing and everyone assumes someone else will say it. It shows up in a meeting where a bad idea is quietly agreed to because nobody wants to be the first to look uncertain. It shows up online, in comment sections, where thousands of witnesses to the same cruelty each assume their one voice won't matter, so none of them speak. The number of witnesses hasn't shrunk the moral weight of the moment. It's only shrunk how much of that weight any single person feels. Ancient humans never faced this particular trap, not at this scale. Their groups were small enough that responsibility was never ambiguous, never diffused across dozens of anonymous strangers who'd never see each other again. You live in a species built for tribes of 30, dropped into cities of millions, oceans of strangers online, feeds full of faces you'll never meet. The wiring that once made cooperation effortless now sometimes makes it disappear entirely, simply because there are too many people around to feel personally responsible for any of them. So the next time you're in a crowd and something feels wrong, notice the moment your eyes drift to check everyone else's face before you act. That flicker is not weakness. It's not proof that you don't care. It's a script written into your brain by ancestors who never had to solve for anonymity. You can override it. You already know how. Point. Name someone. Say the words out loud. Because the truth was never that a crowd doesn't care. The truth is that a crowd is just a room full of people, each one quietly waiting to see who moves first.